We're going to hop right into the next film discussion with director Emma Johnson of Equally Shared Parenting. I don't know if there's a trailer for this one or not, but our production crew will play it if there is.
Motherhood can be totally exhausting. You do it all. Take care of the kids, run everyone to sports, doctors, play dates, cook, clean laundry. Plus, you work full time. The kids can see their dad on the weekend, but they need a primary home, right? But what if I told you the every other weekend schedule isn't actually what's good for kids? That it hurts kids. In fact, there are 60 peer-reviewed studies that prove that it's best for kids when they spend approximately equal time with both parents. Kids grow up seeing dads juggle family and work, manage households, and be involved caretakers. And kids grow up seeing moms as breadwinners and taking care of themselves as well as others. Not only do kids benefit from bonding with both parents equally, all that lawyer money can go to the college fund. Everyone wins. So if you believe in gender equality and what's best for kids and what's best for you, start by splitting parenting time 50-50. Simple.
All right. So without further ado, I would like to introduce everyone to Emma Johnson, the director of that film.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for thinking of us to be a platform to tell your story and share some information with folks that they may not have had ready access to. This is a very compelling twist on, sort of conventional parenting post-divorce or post-separation.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about, the genesis of this story or this new frame of thinking.
Right. So I come at this work. So I was a child of divorce and I grew up with almost primarily my mom. Yes. Hi, sisterhood. Right.
Yeah.
Just like your previous guest, everybody has a point of reference for divorce or separated families. And so my story, of course, I swore I was not going to be a single mom, but I did. I went through a divorce. Saw myself a single mom about 10 years ago. Well, it was more like 12 years ago. Eventually, just launched a blog. So I'm a writer and journalist by career and started a blog. I had a lot of things to talk about going through divorce and dating after divorce and being a mom. And over these 10 years, both through my own personal experience and also this blog grew into what has become a large business. And as far as I know, it's the largest platform for single moms in the world and has opened up all kinds of really incredible opportunities. One of which is that I just have literally millions of data points about single moms and what's going on in that world, and also increasingly single dads and divorced and separated families. And so when I split up, I went through the trauma of divorce and separation, and just like most people, I just went to what I knew, which was that I was going to be the primary parent. These little babies were going to stay with me, and the kids could visit their dad, right? That was just how it's going to be. I didn't really question it, and none of the lawyers I was talking to questioned it. Nobody in my orbit questioned it. And fast forward a couple years, and I was so resentful because I had all the responsibility of these kids. Like I won, but nobody won. Like I was overwhelmed. I was working and earning, and I was primary breadwinner, and then these little kids were with me. And this is what I was seeing. So this was very unfair. So this is a long genesis. So fast forward a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I started becoming my paradigm shifted, and it completely flipped my own life, and it was largely informed by what I was seeing around me. This was not okay. I'm a feminist. I'm a progressive. I believe in equality across the board. And how can we have equality if we don't have equal time? It is impossible. We cannot have equality if we do not have equal time. And I'm coming at this really as a so the world of equally shared parenting has been around for a long time, since we've had divorce 40, 50 years ago, since people have been divorcing mainstream. And most of the voices that I was hearing and networking with out there were men who were coming at it from a position of their rights being violated, right? That their rights as humans, as parents, were being violated because they lost access to their children, right? And that was very unfair. And that was absolutely true. And their focus was always on policy work, changing it's at the state levels, changing state laws to have a presumption of equality. And so that was happening. I was not seeing a whole lot of traction happening in that space. Meanwhile, I'm a media professional. I have I figured out how to connect with women. Like, this is something that I've learned to do over this career that I've had all these years. And I thought, well, how can I be most useful in the world, right? If we want to make a movement, I really believe very deeply that this is really a very powerful movement. It's the science. I did that piece that was a review of 60 peer-reviewed studies. I mean, the actual number of studies that show this is what's best for kids, it's more than 100 and counting. I mean, the social science is there. This is what is best for kids. And increasingly, we're learning this is what's best for men. Absolutely. It's meant when men are more involved with their children, suicide rates are down, mental health rates are improved, physical rates are improved. But this is also what's great for women. And I've done my own research around this. There's a correlation between higher income for women, the more equality they have in their time sharing. This is both inside marriage, but also for single parents, separated families. So we now know that there's this incredible opportunity to move the needle on gender equality, because the majority of families with kids are separated. 54% of millennial moms have a child outside of marriage. This is a force to be reckoned with. And because you cannot mandate equality inside of a marriage. You cannot make a husband come home and do his share of the laundry. You can't make that happen. But you can go to family court and mandate that time is split equally between moms and dads in separated homes. So in my motivation to use, I'm calling in the big guy, like, how do I use my skills? How do I use this network that I have to tell this story and connect with the most number of people? And I really focus on women, right? Because I believe that women do have the power. If you go to family court as a mom and say, I need to have these kids majority of time, statistically across the country, you will get it. Whether you have a good reason to or not, whether it's really we're looking at the social science or not, whether it's really even in the mom's best interest, she's going to get those kids. So we have to connect with these moms and help them understand why this is good for everybody, especially the kids, especially her. So that was the genesis of this video. It's part of other projects I have going on. I've done research and white papers and a lot of media work. I've always been really lucky through my blog work to have a lot of access to big national media outlets. And I'm writing a book. So this is just one piece. I felt like I needed a really positive, pro-woman, short, like the full cut of that piece is less than 2 minutes long. It's cute. It's got the cute colors. It's a positive way.
Your animator's great. Yeah.
Yeah, she was wonderful. She's a activist animator too. You might check her out, Lucy Studios. She did this really great thing. Her jam is consent, sexual consent, and telling it in a funny way can happen. And so we worked really well together. Randomly, she's a separated mom with 50-50, so she got it intuitively. And it's been great. It's this topic, when it comes up, it's often controversial. It does frame things, as you mentioned, in a way people are not used to. And that's the whole point, right? But that's also overwhelmingly, if you look at the comments on some of the social media where this thing, it's lived on social media, it's been seen hundreds of thousands of times now. Women are commenting there and privately to me too. And they're like, this changed my thinking. I did not think about this. I'm going to go to my ex and suggest more time sharing, equal time sharing, or I'm going to talk to my sister. She's going through a divorce. And this is the goal. This is how we can talk about laws are really, really hard to change, but they're easy if you change the culture first. And that's the goal. I'm trying to chip away at the culture so that you don't need laws if you've got a really positive culture.
So yeah, that was sort of where my next line of questioning was going to go into. Intuitively, my sister and her husband are going through a separation, and they landed on this week on, week off shared parenting scenario. I'm wondering, because you've clearly done a lot of research, how that equally shared time intersects with potentially, fathers who are unwilling participants in fatherhood, and also relationships that may have ended because of not healthy circumstances, abuse, or whatever that spectrum, wherever on that spectrum you may have landed in that relationship. So yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, those are very good and very common questions. So in terms of what was the first part of the question? I'll just remember the unhealthy. If it's good, like
unhealthy relationships ending, then also unwilling participants.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I would like, okay, this is a revolution, and we're not going to get every single parent on board. We're not going to convince every mom to relinquish control, and we're not going to convince every dad. And we are speaking gendered, and I feel perfectly comfortable with that because these issues do tend to fall on gendered lines. Thankfully, that is changing dramatically. But yeah, we can go there and just talk about it in gendered ways. But and dads aren't going to show up equally. I see that every day in my own family. And why would they? Because we have marginalized men as fathers since the day they were born. We have told dads that the best, like, oh, it's nice to have a dad. Like, dad will play catch with you and make dumb jokes. You know, that's our ideal father, is the Homer Simpson character. And then we get upset when he doesn't step up and do what 50% of what can be a very extreme demands from a mom. Right. So why do we get to say that the mom makes the standards for parenting and then be disappointed when this dad who's been belittled since birth doesn't show up and do his share?
Yeah.
Right. So I always say in this work that, I mean, I have access to this very large community of moms who frequently complain that dads don't show up, but I also have access to a large community of dads who say that moms stand in the way of their fatherhood. And I believe they are both true. We have to embrace that they're both true.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If we're being equal, yes.
They are, and anecdotally, I have no way to quantify that. Anecdotally, I would say those are happening in equal measure. So I often say it's equal rights, equal responsibility. Right? It's like, okay, moms, you want all this time sharing with the, you want disproportionate time with the kids, then you don't get to complain, right? Or the dads, it's like, oh, you want to scream about that your rights are being violated, which they are, and I believe you, but then you have to show up, like truly show up 50%, not just the time, but all the zillion things that it takes to raise a kid, right? So this is equal rights, equal responsibility. And then when we talk about how the relationship ended, well, one, that's assuming there was a relationship. Increasingly, children are born out of relationship. People having sex that were not a relationship, right? And that makes it harder to co-parent because you don't have the foundation. So we know that when people are married, or if you're co-parenting, it's more likely you're going to cohabiting, living together, you're going to stay together, right? So the more commitment is, the more marriage there is. But then we start getting into things along class and race, right? Because white people tend to be married and to have longer, stable relationships than people of color who tend not to live together long term and have babies together. So there is a big two stories being told in separated families. But overall, I will say, it doesn't matter how the relationship ended. You don't get to say, oh, he cheated, so therefore the kids are mine. Like, no one cares. Like, literally, no one cares. There's a reason there's no fault divorce, because no one cares. Does not matter. Like, your feelings got hurt, your heart was broken, and I'm sorry for that. But you have kids together, and they deserve both of their parents. And I will bust out mounds of social science to support that. It is a human right. Children have a human right to be raised by their parents, and parents have a human right to raise their own children. And per your last guest, the adoption thing, I think I often equate that culturally, we get that. We understand intuitively. There is this huge movement towards open adoption because intuitively we understand as humans that people should be connected biologically to where they're from. Okay, people are messy. People are not capable of raising their children. People are not capable of staying in a June Cleaver family, but they still are connected to their biological kin. In the social welfare system, we increasingly want to keep children with a family member, with their parents, ideally, or extended family. Yeah. We want to keep children with their parents at the border, right? We don't want international adoptions anymore. That's like almost obsolete, right? We want to keep people with their kin. And so why would we not? Why is separated families outside of that? And it's not. And the other piece of the pie that I'm going to say is this is happening. Like, by a couple of different metrics, I can estimate the United States, about 15% of separated families do have 50-50 arrangements. And most of those are not by a law, because we only have 2 states where equally shared parenting is the law. Presumption is the law. It's a rebuttable presumption. It's not a mandate. It's a rebuttable presumption. But what's happening, and I hear this organically, that this topic will come up in, like, let's say my Facebook group of all these moms, and they'll say, like, I don't know what the big deal is because 50-50 is the law in my state and everyone I know does it. But they'll be like in South Florida or Kansas City or something, and it's not the law there, but it's happening organically. And what I would say to people, separating, or maybe you're a counsel, a loved one of somebody that is seeking your support when they're going through a divorce, separation, having a baby outside of a relationship, it's like, that if you're comforting them and you're saying, look, this is happening. Everyone's going to 50-50. Adele just, like, all these celebrities are doing 50-50. It's really beautiful. Your kids are going to grow up and judge you. And I know, because I judge my mom, and I know these women, they're like, oh man, my parents were a hot mess. They did divorce all wrong, and I hate them for it now.
It's
And
easier
they
to grow up
judge
and
you.
judge your parents now because of social
Yeah, right.
media and and all
They
the
will
things.
judge you.
Yeah.
Right. And this will be the norm. Our children are going to grow up and do 50-50, and they're going to look back and they're like, what are you doing? Like, fighting dad for all this time in court. It was so miserable for what? You're crazy. That's insane. And they will judge you. And we can use shame as a good social motivator.
Yeah, well, it's worked on many other things. Yeah. So thank you
But
so
back to
much.
I didn't really answer your question. Like, basically the question is, what about abuse? And that's almost always the first question. And my first pushback is, why is it when we're talking about dad's parenting, our first question is, well, what about abuse? Why is the presumption that men are abusers?
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah.
So, and the other piece of the pie is that we are, this movement, myself included, are advocating for a rebuttable presumption. And so there are always exceptions. There will always be exceptions. And family courts that are adopting equally shared parenting, even if it's not the law, there's plenty of judges around the country that are just like, you're ridiculous. I'm sick about hearing you fight. Get out of my court and do 50-50.
Yeah.
Like, that is the movement. And then that changes the culture, because all the lawyers in that town know that. And they're like, they will tell their clients, like, look, the judges can do 50-50. So just do 50-50 and get on with your life. And then it happens. And that's how change happens. So, but you know what, that's the thing, the judges like it because it gets all the crazy stuff out. It gets the false allegations out of court. It gets just the pettiness out of court, and it makes room for cases that do need a judicial system. It does need litigation. And the studies do find overwhelmingly, there's a lot of bad science out there in this realm, but there's great research from Jennifer Hartman out of the University of Colorado that finds that the courts actually do a really good job of sussing out the abuse. When there is abusive cases, they overwhelmingly do a great job. And now there's another follow-up study that's being done in Canada that hasn't been finalized yet, but that the judges do a good job of sorting out who is abusive and identifying families where there is an abusive parent. So ultimately, this is it helps survivors, it helps protect in the minority of cases. But again, this is a shrinking number of minority cases where there is abuse. Thankfully, domestic violence is dramatically dropped since 1994, when our friend Joe Biden helped pass the Violence Against Women Act. It's a remarkable success story that still has work to be done. But we really do have to stop thinking about parenting from a presumption of abuse, because that's just straight up sexism and it's unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I just think that's a great note to leave on. We have to keep this show cranking and going forward.
You're doing a great job. Proud of you.
So let's do that. Thank you so much for all of your time. Your information was on the scroller on the bottom, but if there's a website you want to shout out real fast, go ahead and do it.
Oh yeah, a lot of our activity happens at Facebook / Moms for Shared Parenting, but plenty of dudes on there. Yeah. And thank you for this opportunity to talk about this issue.
Thank you for your advocacy. And until next time, take care.
All right, take care.